Hi again. So today we will start with the third section. And so in the second section we saw how people like Weber, Marx looked at religion in order to understand modernity, capitalism, and we also saw how domains of secularism and religion co-constituted with one another and secularism dominated the religion. But in this section we're moving outside of the domain of religion versus secularism. We're kind of looking at beliefs, practices, traditions that cannot be understood by this divide. This divide, secularism versus religion, is by no means a natural divide, but it's a constituted divide, as we have discussed. Yeah. So this article, I think it's a good and nice start for this third section, as it looks at the practices of hunting and how hunting practices among Yukon people are very different, are radically different than the ones in Western society. Not only hunting practices per se, but the underlying belief or underlying understanding that these practices, the hunting practices, involve a reciprocal relationship between the human and the animal. I will get to that point. But Nadasdy kind of starts with saying that he's gonna look at Yukon people who are situated in the west of Canada, and they're among the Kulein First Nation. So those nations are self-governing units, kind of they're not tribes, because when I say tribe, then I immediately resonate with this modern understanding that tribes are isolated, tribes are coming from a different time, but which is not the case. These people, they want to preserve their indigenous practices, but they're also very involved with modernity, with modern governmental techniques per se. So, and Nadasdy is saying that there is an agreement, or there are meetings between Canadian government and the Kulein First Nation, yeah, but about questions of wildlife management policies and land claim negotiations, and there is a step forward for recognizing Yukon people's claims and kind of taking actions in favor of what people who live in that area want to do. Even if the law recognizes as these people's ways of living as traditional views, there is a discrepancy, or despite these efforts, the marginalization of these people and land still continue, Nadasdy argues. I would say, I don't want to jump to the criticism, but this is the point where I think maybe I should mention. I would say one of the weak points of the article is that Nadasdy is not discovering how the marginalization of these people take place, yeah? For example, I would like him to elaborate on more about a case, yeah? A concrete example of how Canadian government doesn't recognize people's wills or people's demands. And Nadasdy is saying they're not taking, like, the reason why marginalization of people, these people, Yukon people, continue, because Western governments do not take seriously their Yukon people's ontological views, yeah, and anthropologists have played important role in not taking people's views seriously, people's ontologies seriously. So there is one concept that we will come across again and again in this third section, which is ontology. So ontology, it's a bit of a complicated term in terms of philosophy, but we do not have to delve in it in philosophical terms. I think it suffices for us to know that ontology refers to reality. Yeah? Reality or cosmology. Towards the end of the article, Nadasdy was asking, is there one universal reality through which we understand the world? Yeah, so ontology is a combination of our beliefs, traditions, practices, the way, the perspective, the basic perspective that we see the world. So if you look at Western ontology, for example, Western ontology puts a strict divide between nature and culture. Also, a strict divide between humans and other living beings. Yeah, and this is called anthropocentrism. Yeah, putting the human in the center and then looking at the world. Yeah. We will talk about this more in Cohn's introduction to how forests think. But, and through this ontological point of view, positing humans very different and superior to animals, for example, it's not possible to understand or even to be open to Yukon's view to human and animal interaction. Yeah? And that is why, because this is, Anadasti says, Yukon's view of human and animal interaction is fundamentally incompatible with Euro-American centric view. Yeah? So, for example, Tyler, our dear old anthropologist, he says that when he looks at hunting practices similar to Yukon, he says that, oh, actually, these people take animals as actors full with agency because these people are not capable to distinguish animals between humans. Yeah, so he's saying that actually these practices are due to an incapacity of people. And some people say, oh, these are not the way they actually think about the reality, but these are people's beliefs, or these are metaphors that they make sense of reality. But Nadasdy is saying actually it is not, because it is, if you remember Taylor's article, he was also kind of referring to this. According to Yukon's point of view, humans and animals, they make part of the same social reality. Yeah, so they are the subjects, and animals have also agency. They are actors with full agency, so they talk to people, they communicate to people, and so the concept of personhood, Nadasdy says, transcends human. So there are human persons and there are animal persons. And despite the fact that persons, animal persons and human persons, have different outlooks, physical outlooks at the appearance, they share the same inner domain. Yeah, so they belong to the same level of interiority in a way. So, according to Yukon's ontology, there is no strict divide between humans and animals. They make part of the same social realm. Yeah? So this was important. And Nadasdy, I think Rebecca was saying this in her reflection paper, Nadasdy looks at these hunting practices through the idea of reciprocity. Yeah? So the animal gives itself to the person, to the human person, and in return you accept the gift. You don't say, oh, does it really want to, or does it have bad intentions, but you receive the gift and you reciprocate the gift in a certain way. Yeah? And Nadasdy was saying, while making this connection to mouse, I really like the way he makes the connection. He says that mouse, like as an early anthropologist he was able to see that, or take into account that things such as the gifts that people were reciprocating in mouse account had how, like things, mouse was able to take into account that things were considered animate, things were considered with spirits. Yeah, but Nadasdy says people, anthropologists, were more actually reluctant in seeing that animals were considered to have spirits, and anthropologists were more reluctant to base their accounts on the fact that animals have spirits. Yeah, spirits compatible to humans. We may believe that animals have spirits, but you would say like, oh no, they have a spirit of a more inferior level. So that's why he was talking about Ingold. Ingold, we won't read Ingold's article, but we will read other stuff that mentions or refers to Ingold again. Ingold gets close to kind of understanding the idea of reciprocity between humans and animals, but even Ingold says that, oh, actually, we have a difference. There's a difference between language and speech, and thinking versus intentionality. Even if these Yukon people think that people are and people, there is a relationship of reciprocity between animals and humans. They really don't think that they have kind of I don't know. Ingold says that Yukon people do not think that humans are not superior than animals. Yeah, because he says actually language is what makes humans different than animals, and there's a difference between language and speech. And humans possess language, and the interactions and the communication between humans and animals take place through speech. So Ingold labels the interaction, the communication between humans and animals as one that belongs to speech. Or he says, no, but people think, and even if animals act intentful, it doesn't form to thinking, it doesn't amount to thinking. And Nadasdy says this also shows how Ingold sees, thinks, observes the actions or the traditions of these people through his perspective, through Ingold's own perspective, through the ontology of Western European American perspective. Yeah? And he says, I am offering something else. I am offering radical participation. Yeah? Through which the anthropologist at least would be open to experience what people say, yeah? So also he's bringing experience over maybe thinking and conceptualizing, yeah? Nadasdy is saying, before you conceptualize or before you analyze, maybe you need to experience emotionally these people's worlds. And that is possible through radical participation. So he is making a very good definition of radical participation at page 36. I am opening the article. Okay, yeah. So at page 36 on the second column, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, sixth line of the first paragraph. Radical participation requires anthropologists to take absolutely seriously the viewpoints of their informants. To do so, they must cultivate the skills and immerse themselves in the everyday practices of the people with whom they work. Not only practices like hunting and cutting meat, but also dreaming and consulting diviners. The point is to gain the competence necessary to act intelligibly in their informant's socially constituted world. This enables one to treat one's own experiences as primary data, which is especially vital for understanding extraordinary experiences that are largely impervious to standard forms of academic inquiry. And that's how he says that he understood the rabbit kind of gave herself to him, yeah? At the end of the article, he describes a scene that the rabbit he previously seen the other day comes and gives herself to Nadasdy himself. So this was only possible, Nadasdy says, because he was kind of open to experience, yeah? And this, he says, is better than suspension of disbelief. Suspension of disbelief is also a method that anthropologists kind of advocated for understanding beliefs, traditions, it's not, yeah, traditions or practices that are outside of Western ontology, yeah? Very different than Western practices. They said, okay, instead of disbelief, what Tyler did, we can just suspend our disbelief and then try to understand, yeah? But Nadasdy is saying, no, suspension of disbelief is not enough, because what happens is that your way of thinking or your way of perspective will influence the study. So, a couple of you mentioned that, oh, this is a much better way of kind of relating to animals, that in our world we just ate and we're not thankful. I would say yes, but a mere act of just being thankful to animal would not solve the problem, because among Yukon people you can see that they put themselves accountable for the act of killing and eating, yeah? So you see the processes of killing, eating, like people are very involved in that. But in industrial way of consuming the meat, this is very different. We have no idea where the meat is coming from, yeah? So just being thankful wouldn't solve that problem. If you think in Marxist terms, like, you do not understand how the meat comes to your plate, in a way. You do not see those processes. I think one of the critiques that I have in mind to Nadasdy is that, so he lives with the community, yeah, for an amount of time, for a year. I would challenge him asking the question of, is it so easy to change your kind of deeply rooted Western ontology in a year? You know, is it like, oh, I'm open to experience what Yukon people, how Yukon people see the world, you know? My first reaction as someone from Western world was like when I was reading the scene of Rabbit kind of giving herself to Nadasdy, I'm like, oh, she wants to be cured. She doesn't want to get killed, you know? This is my reaction. This is also very Western centered. But I'm not convinced that someone can just change in a year their way of seeing the world. Also, Melanie was talking about this in her reflection. Nadasdy doesn't refer to colonization. So, through the processes of colonization, indigenous peoples' beliefs, practices, ways of being were regarded as primitive. And this was legitimization of colonization. Yeah, colonizers needed to dominate, needed to talk in the place of indigenous people because these people were not enough, were not reasonable enough to decide for themselves, let's say. And Nadasdy doesn't refer to that vein of literature, which is actually fine, but I think he could do a bit more. Yeah, I think this is it. I'm going to send you now the article that we're gonna read for Thursday. And yeah, see you next time.